Good evening and welcome back to another episode of The Longing. Today we are going to be continuing to read the Iliad by Homer. So let's get going. Then first thy spear, divine Patroclus, flew, where the war raged and where the tumult grew, close to the stern of that famed ship which bore unblessed Protesilaus to Ilion shore. The great Paeonian bold Pyachemes stood, who led his bands from Axius' winding flood. His shoulder blade receives the fatal wound, the groaning warrior pants upon the ground. His troops that see their country's glory slain fly diverse, scattered o'er the distant plain. Patroclus' arm forbids the spreading fires, and from the half-burned ship proud Troy retires. Cleared from the smoke the joyful navy lies, in heaps on heaps the foe tumultuous flies. Triumphant Greece her rescued decks ascends, and loud acclaim the starry region rends. So when thick clouds enwrap the mountain's head, o'er heaven's expanse like one black ceiling spread, sudden the thunderer with a flashing ray bursts through the darkness and lets down the day. The hills shine out, the rocks in prospect rise, and streams and vales and forests strike the eyes. The smiling scene wide opens to the sight, and all the unmeasured ether flames with light. Sorry, my throat is a little croaky today. But Troy repulsed and scattered o'er the plains, forced from the navy, yet the fight maintains. Now every Greek some hostile hero slew, but still the foremost bold Patroclus flew. As Aurelius had turned him round, sharp in his thigh he felt the piercing wound. The brazen pointed spear with vigour thrown, the thigh transfixed and broke the brittle bone. Headlong he fell, next Thoas was thy chance. Thy breast unarmed received the Spartan lance. Phylides' dart as Amphidas drew nigh, his blow prevented and transpierced his thigh, tore all the brawn and rent the nerves away. In darkness and in death the warrior lay. In equal arms 2 sons of Nestor stand, and 2 bold brothers of the Lycian band. By great Antilochus Atimneus dies, pierced in the flank, lamented youth he lies. Kind Maris, bleeding in his brother's wound, defends the breathless carcass on the ground. Furious he flies his murderer to engage, but godlike Thrasymed prevents his rage. Between his arm and shoulder aims a blow, his arm falls spouting on the dust below. He sinks with endless darkness covered o'er, and vents his soul effused with gushing gore. Slain by 2 brothers, thus 2 brothers bleed, Sarpedon's friends, Amisodarus' seed. Amisodarus, who by Furies led, the bane of men abhorred Chimera bred. Skilled in the dart in vain his sons expire, and pay the forfeit of their guilty sire. Stopped in the tumult Cleobulus lies, beneath Oileus' arm a living prize. A living prize not long the Trojan stood, the thirsty falchion drank his reeking blood. Plunged in his throat the smoking weapon lies, black death and fate unpitying seal his eyes. Amid the ranks with mutual thirst of fame, Lycon the brave and fierce Penelus came. In vain their javelins at each other flew, now met in arms their eager swords they drew. On the plumed crest of his Boeotian foe, the daring Lycon aimed a noble blow. The sword broke short, but his Penelus sped, full on the juncture of the neck and head. The head divided by a stroke so just, hung by the skin, the body sunk to dust. O'ertaken Neamas by Merion bleeds, pierced through the shoulder as he mounts his steeds. Back from the car he tumbles to the ground, his swimming eyes eternal shades surround. Next Erimas was doomed his fate to feel, his opened mouth received the Cretan steel. Beneath the brain the point a passage tore, crashed the thin bones and drowned the teeth in gore. His mouth, his eyes, his nostrils pour a flood, he sobs his soul out in the gush of blood. As when the flocks neglected by the swain, or kids or lambs lie scattered o'er the plain, a troop of wolves the unguarded charge survey, and rend the trembling unresisting prey. Thus on the foe the Greeks impetuous came, Troy fled unmindful of her former fame. But still at Hector godlike Ajax aimed, still pointed at his breast his javelin flamed. The Trojan chief experienced in the field, o'er his broad shoulders spread the massy shield. Observed the storm of darts the Grecians pour, and on his buckler caught the ringing shower. He sees for Greece the scale of conquest rise, yet stops and turns and saves his loved allies. As when the hand of Jove a tempest forms, and rolls the cloud to blacken heaven with storms. Dark o'er the fields the ascending vapour flies, and shades the sun and blots the golden skies. So from the ships along the dusky plain, dire flight and terror drove the Trojan train. Even Hector fled through heads of disarray, the fiery coursers forced their lord away. While far behind his Trojans fall confused, wedged in the trench in one vast carnage bruised. Chariots on chariots roll the clashing spokes, shock while the maddening steeds break short their yokes. In vain they labour up the steepy mound, their charioteers lie foaming on the ground. Fierce on the rear with shouts Patroclus flies, tumultuous clamour fills the fields and skies. Thick drifts of dust involve their rapid flight. Clouds rise on clouds, and heaven is snatched from sight. The affrighted steeds their dying lords cast down, scour o'er the fields and stretch to reach the town. Loud o'er the rout was heard the victor's cry, where the war bleeds and where the thickest die, where horse and arms and chariots he overthrown, and bleeding heroes under axles groan. No stop, no check, the steeds of Peleus knew. From bank to bank the immortal coursers flew. High bounding o'er the fosse the whirling car smokes through the ranks, o'ertakes the flying war, and thunders after Hector. Hector flies. Patroclus shakes his lance, but fate denies. Not with less noise, with less impetuous force, the tide of Trojans urge their desperate course, than when in autumn Jove his fury pours, and earth is loaden with incessant showers. When guilty mortals break the eternal laws, or judges bribed betray the righteous cause. From their deep beds he bids the rivers rise, and opens all the floodgates of the skies. The impetuous torrents from their hills obey, whole fields are drowned and mountains swept away. Loud roars the deluge till it meets the main, and trembling man sees all his labours vain. And now the chief the foremost troops repelled, back to the ships his destined progress held, bore down half Troy in his resistless way, and forced the routed banks to stand the day. Between the space where silver Simois flows, where lay the fleets and where the rampires rose, all grim in dust and blood Patroclus stands, and turns the slaughter on the conquering bands. First Pronos died beneath his fiery dart, which pierced below the shield his valiant heart. Thestor was next who saw the chief appear, and fell the victim of his coward fear. Shrunk up he sat with wild and haggard eye, nor stood to combat, nor had force to fly. Patroclus marked him as he shunned the war, and with unmanly trembling shook the car, and dropped the flowing reins him twixt the jaws. The javelin sticks, and from the chariot draws. As on a rock that overhangs the main, an angler studious of the line and cane. Some mighty fish draws panting to the shore, not with less ease the barbed javelin bore. The gaping dastard as the spear was shook, he fell and life his heartless breast forsook. Next on Euryalus he flies, a stone, large as a rock, was by his fury thrown. Full on his crown the ponderous fragment flew, and burst the helm and cleft the head in two. Prone to the ground the breathless warrior fell, and death involved him with the shades of hell. Then low in dust Epoltes Echius lie, Iphias Evippus Polymelus die. Amphoterus and Erimas succeed, and last Tlepolemus and Pyres bleed. Wow, I'm struggling with these names. Where'er he moves, the growing slaughters spread, in heaps on heaps a monument of dead. And I've just seen the time, so I'm going to leave that there. That's the end of the episode, so thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you all have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon or night. No matter what time of day it is, I hope you all have a wonderful one of it. And as always, we will be back tomorrow for more of The Longing. Goodbye.